Welcome back to the Midday Show. My guest today is a legendary Kansas City broadcaster who can be seen every weekday morning on 41 Action News Today and Kansas City Live. His new show, Nichols at Night, airs Saturday nights after SNL. Please welcome Joel Nichols.
Well, thank you. It's my great pleasure to be here with you.
It's an honor because why broadcasting? You could have chose any career path, as everybody does. Why broadcasting?
Well, when I was a little kid, my dad had a radio station, and this was back in the days when you could have a radio station that played every kind of music and did every kind of show. It wasn't very specialized. It was also back in the days where two guys, my dad and this engineer, could actually build a radio station and do it, which financially you can't do anymore. So his best friend built the board, put up the tower, did all of that in this little town where I grew up. And my dad did the sales and the on-air and the promotions, and that was kind of his thing. So all of my brothers and I grew up kind of around this radio station, and he was really active in the radio station for maybe about 3 or 4 years, and then did part-time work for them for another 10 years. So I was kind of around radio for that time. But I actually went to school to be a teacher. So I was going to be basically a high school teacher, and then that didn't quite pan out. I worked for a state legislator for a while in Madison, Wisconsin, wrote speeches and wrote columns and did things for her, and then saw this ad for volunteers needed at a cable TV station. Thought I should volunteer, so when I teach, maybe that would be helpful to have worked around a TV station, and it just led to broadcasting.
And how long have you been in Kansas City?
Well, I guess I'm in my 28th year now.
That is incredible. What do you think the secret to longevity in one place is?
Well, there are a lot of ways, as you know, and a lot of people who are in broadcasting know, a lot of the time you are sort of nomadic. You kind of move, where and I guess I would have been willing to do that if there had been some opportunity that seemed better for my family or whatever. But I was in Madison, Wisconsin, worked at a TV station there, which is kind of around where I grew up. And then Channel 9 here in town called me and said, come down and do this new morning show called First News. So I came down here to do that. And, and I was there for about a quarter of a century. And then now I'm at Channel 41 and get to do a lot of interesting things. It's just, for us, for my wife and I, it's because it's a great place to have kids. We have 4 kids. And so really our family dictated that we're going to kind of stay put and make this, our home. And I've just been very lucky that, TV-wise, I've had a lot of opportunities, and radio a little bit, to do a lot of different things.
Awesome. And you said you're at 41 Action News right now.
Yes.
And you're doing Kansas City Live.
Right.
Kind of the reboot of, they did Kansas City Live about maybe 7 years ago. They rebooted it.
Right.
They brought you on. And what has been the kind of idea around Kansas City Live for people who haven't seen it?
Right. It's designed to be an hour where you learn about our town. You learn about great places to eat. You learn about great places to go and visit. You learn about interesting people that are here, and also the interesting people that come through town. So when a celebrity of some a name comes through town, they'll be on the show. We had Wendy Williams, who has a talk show. She was just on recently. And so you'll have these people come through, and it's basically an hour to kind of spend a little lighter than, it's much lighter than the news.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can have some fun. And Michelle Davidson, my co-host, is just great to work with, and we get along very well and hit it off from the very first day. So it's really a way to kind of tell Kansas City, hey, this is a great place to live, and here are some great things to do. And over the year or so that I've done it, I've had a lot of folks come up to me and say, I've moved here and I found your show, and it really has been teaching me about our community. So it's a very positive, community relevant show, and also it's a revenue show, because there will be some paid segments on the show. Some local business will pay for a segment, and we're very clear about that this is a paid-for segment. But that's also a way to kind of generate some revenue for the station. But I think mostly it's a conduit between the TV station and the community.
Definitely. And take us through a day in the life. Because you do 41 Action News Today in the morning. And take us through maybe when you wake up to when you go to sleep.
Very good.
That standard day.
In the old days, at the other place, I was on the air starting at 4:30 in the morning until 7 o'clock. No, 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And so I would have to be to the station by 2 in the morning. And that meant getting up at 1, and it was a pretty short night. But now, most days, I'll get up around 4:30, get to the station by 5:30. Or if it's a live shot, sometimes I'll go out and do something fun live. If Disney on Ice is in town, I may go there. Or if there's something fun to do. But it's at some point, starting at around 5:30 in the morning, I'll be wherever I'm supposed to be. We'll go on the air 2 or 3 or 4 times between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. And we'll also record some things for later newscasts as well. And so we'll get done with that by 7 o'clock. I'm done with my morning news duties usually, and then I'll work my way back to the station if it's been a live shot, or I'll just walk down the hall and go to the Kansas City Live office, and I'll try to help write some of the little teases that you do, coming up next, here's what this is. So I'll try to write some of that. I'll look over whatever interviews we have. We may have a satellite interview to do. The other day I had Sir Ian McKellen, did a satellite interview with him, so that was fun. And I'll do that, and then we'll, by 10 o'clock, we're all set to go, and we go on the air from 10 to 11, and it's live, and it just rolls along. And at 11, sometimes 11 or 12, I will tape a Nichols at Night.
Of course.
If we have a guest available or somebody coming in. And as a rule, by early afternoon, my day is kind of done at the station, and then I'll sometimes come here to Johnson County Community College because I teach a couple days a week here. Otherwise, I'll head for home. But also another part of broadcasting and television and radio both, you have personal appearances. So,
Exactly.
For example, as we sit here and speak, a couple tomorrow in this time frame, I'll go out to Bates County and speak to a group out in Bates County. So
Awesome.
You've got some personal appearance stuff to do too, and it all kind of makes for a pretty good kind of different day. Every day is a little different.
Awesome. And you mentioned Nichols at Night, your newest program on 41 Action News. Tell us a little bit about that. So you get celebrity guests coming in, and it's an interview show, correct?
Exactly right. When my when we had our first little baby 26 years ago, she would be up in the middle of the night, and I'd be up in the middle of the night getting ready to go to work. And there was a show on the air called Later with Bob Costas.
Yeah.
And it was basically Bob Costas one-on-one with talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And the general manager, or excuse me, the news director at that TV station that I used to be at, who's now the general manager at Channel 41, said, let's try to do something like that once a week, not every day, but once a week. And so we started it over at the other place. And then when I went to 41, he said, you want to try to, reboot this or do this again? I said, sure. So basically, we have some very amazing creative people at Channel 41 who put a set together and the lighting together and the graphics, and they just did a great job. And then go out and find guests who will sit down for an hour, a half hour, and we just tape it as if live. And we've been very lucky. We've had Kevin Bacon on when he was in town, and Billy Bob Thornton's been on, and then we've had some local great people like Julia Kaufman on to talk about the Royals and the other things in town that her family's been so involved in. Johnny Dare's been on. We've just had a really good group of people so far, and I hope it continues.
Definitely, and that's kind of what we do here. I try to reach out to as many people as I can on Twitter, email, all that stuff, and we've had great guests like Bob Bergen was just on, who was on last week. He's the voice of Porky Pig on the Looney Tunes. So we have great people
that's
like
fun.
that.
And you know what you're very good at here? You're not tied to your notes. You're actually having a conversation, which is what's important to do. I think a good interview is a good conversation, and you're great at it.
Thank you. And I have a couple things here and there, just kind of my talking points, but otherwise, I just want to.
You have my criminal record. I don't know why you had to pull my criminal record on me.
I don't know why either. It felt
Jeepers
right.
creepers. I'm very offended.
No, but yeah, who would you say is your favorite broadcaster or host or any of that type of
Well,
person?
let's see. I think as far as an interviewer, somebody who I really think turned out to be a great interviewer was Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
From The Daily Show. Now, in the old days, I would have said, I used to think that there's Jack Parr was a great interviewer, Dick Cavett was a great interviewer. There are a lot of people that I grew up watching. But a more modern, great interviewer, I think that Jon Stewart was great. I think that actually Seth Meyers, who on NBC now is a very, very good interviewer. He doesn't use notes. He really talks to the person. I think for longer kind of interviews, like a 30-minute interview kind of setting, Charlie Rose is very good about being able to kind of keep it going and keep the conversation going. So all of those people are pretty impressive, I think.
And I saw on your Twitter feed you were actually just in New York and interviewed Seth Meyers. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. NBC wants to make sure that everybody knows Seth Meyers is there after Jimmy Fallon, and especially with Stephen Colbert, who, by the way, I think is actually another amazing broadcaster.
Yeah,
when Colbert starts his new talk show, they want to make sure people don't forget, hey, Seth is over here and Jimmy Fallon's over here. So they had some of us from NBC affiliates come out and talk to Seth Meyers, and he and his staff could not have been nicer. It was just a really easy, comfortable, fun conversation.
And do you know when that's going to air?
We're aiming at the weekend of September 12th, I want to say.
Probably just around when they're starting their second season.
As we get into September and all these other shows are starting to come online. So, in September, the first, I think it might be the 5th, whatever that first weekend is, Julia Kaufman, who will be talking about her parents and Kaufman Center and the Royals, and just a fascinating story. The next week will be Seth Meyers, and then the next week will be Wendy Williams.
That's going to be amazing, and you get such great guests, and we try here at the Midday Show to get such
I'm
great
impressed
guests.
You got Porky Pig. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, and we're trying to always step it up. Like we're trying to get Neil Patrick Harris right now, who's doing Best Time Ever on NBC, of course. So we will be right back with more of Joel Nichols here on the Midday Show on eCab Radio. Stick around for much more. Like, we're going to do a fun down with Joel Nichols. That's going to be very exciting. We're going to get some advice from him for any future things that I happen to do, and we'll be right back here on eCab Radio. Welcome back to the Midday Show. I'm here with Kansas City broadcasting legend Joel Nichols. We are going to do a segment right now called The Fun Down. Mm-hmm. This is 7 questions particularly tailored to the best of my ability for you, and we're going to start that right now.
All right.
So, favorite on-air moment?
Favorite on-air moment? Well, I think one of the favorite on-air moments I ever had was I was at the Crown Center. I was standing out on the ice about to do a little weather report, and live on television, a little kid came up behind me, knocked me right on my keister. And I fell right on my keister, and my feet went up, and there we were live on television, and I knocked down this other poor little kid that was standing next to me. So there was just this pile of 3 bodies on the ice in the middle of the 5 o'clock news. So that's one of the more memorable times on air, but I've been very lucky to have a lot of fun moments with, like, my co-host Michelle Davidson. We've had a lot of fun in the last year, and then with others before that. But that's one that always comes to mind.
Yeah, and clear this up for me if you could, because for the longest time I thought a weatherman and a meteorologist were the same thing, and they're not.
They're not the same thing. When I got my job doing weather in Madison, Wisconsin, where I got my first television job, they hired me originally to do feature stories.
Yeah.
And so I did feature stories, and then they said, we need a weekend weatherman. And I said, okay, I'll try to do that. I don't have a degree in meteorology. My degree is in education. And the general manager said, well, that's fine. You can talk about the weather. Just communicate well. That's the main thing. So I started doing weather there just about the time that people were starting to be concerned about being a meteorologist and having a meteorological, neither one of us can pronounce that word. You know, that's why we don't say it.
Yeah.
But have that kind of background and that education, that was starting to be important to people. But I got in right under the wire and did weather for a long time without any kind of AMS seal or meteorology background other than just doing it. And once you've done weather for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you do get a sense of what's happening, and you can do it. But you don't have that education background, which I respect a great deal. I mean, people like Gary Lezak and Jeff Penner and J.D. Rudd and, Kaylee Dion, I mean, I respect their knowledge and their education a great deal.
So would a weatherman do his own research, or?
I always did. I mean, if I was just a weatherman, and I would build my own maps and study the information myself and do the best I could with that information. So you basically do the similar job, but I think that a meteorologist like at Channel 41, that team, they really bring added knowledge and added value to their forecast.
Definitely. Your pinch me moment, your moment in your career where you're like, oh oh my God, this is happening. I
right
can't believe
now.
it.
This is it.
This is it.
This is it.
You're living in the moment.
I can't believe I'm here talking to you.
This is amazing.
This is my pinch me moment. No, I love this stuff because I've taught here at the college for a long time, and I know that it's a great opportunity to get your voice on and get your message out there. And so I really am excited to be able to be here and be part of this with you. I think that's really fun. And I've had a lot of times over the years where I would be sitting there and I'd look across and I'd be interviewing Don Knotts, who was Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show, and I'd go, wow, I grew up watching this guy, and here I am kind of talking to him. So, yeah. I've had a lot of good luck that way.
And your strangest story or assignment that you had to do, your strangest story?
Well, I got sent to speak to an animal psychologist / agent. He would train animals to do things in commercials or plays or movies, and so he was training a dog at this point, and he was also a psychologist with animals of some sort, and he was training a dog at this point to be in the play Annie at Starlight. He was training it to be Sandy, I think that's the dog's name. And we went out there and shot this story, and he was a very nice man, and he really was great with all these animals. And we met Sandy, or the dog that was going to be playing Sandy. And then I said, do you have anything unusual here that I could hold in my hand while, something not a dog or a cat or a horse, which we all know about, but something unusual. He said, I've got just the thing. And he walked in the back, and he came out with this cute little monkey. And he put it on my shoulder, and he said, he's very well behaved. You'll sit right there. So I held the microphone, and I look in the camera, and this little monkey's on my shoulder, and I say, if you need an animal for any occasion, this is the place to go. And as I'm talking, this monkey crawls up on top of my head. And just as I say my name, Joel Nichols reporting, just as I say that, I feel this warm sensation all the way down my back, which was, of course, the monkey piddling all the way down my back.
Oh.
So it was a great story idea, and it ended up to be one of the few times I've been piddled on the air.
Okay, that's amazing. Your favorite depiction of news, like in the media, like Newsroom or Anchorman, something like that?
I think a lot of Anchorman's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And I thought that when I saw the first one especially, I thought it was pretty accurate. I think a movie called Network, which was from 1976, which I show my classes here at Johnson County Community College, really gives you an idea of where television was and where it is now, and how what seemed so silly and ridiculous in 1976 has turned out to be kind of true now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another great one. I think that's a really good movie to watch, and to get an idea about the ethics and morality of it, broadcasting. I think Anchorman is a fun one to watch. I think broadcast news is kind of a fun one to watch too, and you get a sense of what's going on with television. And I think another one that people should watch is Good Night and Good Luck, about Edward R. Murrow and McCarthy. I think it's a fascinating way to depict that.
Your favorite story that you've done, your favorite report, anything?
Favorite story ever. Let's see. What is my favorite story ever? Well, I did a story once about a woman who had 2,500 cat whiskers on cards in a filing cabinet. That was kind of weird and scary. But I've done some story. Well, I'll give you an example. Just the other day, it's not really a story, but it was a live shot. We did a live report from the Salvation Army Children's Center just not too long ago, days ago. And they were having a radiothon that day. And so we were there live in the morning during our morning news on Channel 41. And we were just telling people, hey, if you want to support this children's center, this is a great day to do it. Get involved with the radiothon. They need your help and their money. And these kids who, their lives are pretty rough. This is a place they get help. Well, later that day, somebody who happened to be listening and watching our morning news anonymously gave them $100,000.
Wow.
And it had nothing to do with me personally. It just happened to be that we were there, and we were saying, hey, come on down and be a part of this. And this person happened to be watching Channel 41 and said, I'm going to go help. So, something like that, which you don't always know happened, but luckily the folks there let us know it happened, makes you feel pretty good.
Definitely. Your favorite interview or best interview or guest that you've had on the old show or on Nichols at Night, KC Live?
Right. I think that I always think back to people like Dick Clark and Don Knotts and some of these older stars of television that meant a lot to me because I grew up watching them. But really, recently, we've had so many interesting, fun people like Billy Bob Thornton. Now, he might be one of my favorites right now, Billy Bob Thornton. He just turned out to be a really funny, interesting guy on Nichols at Night, and a very kind of fascinating story. And so I think of the current ones I've done, he kind of stands out. Kevin Bacon and his brother were great too. So yeah, I think he kind of, the other guy that was funny is John O'Hurley, who for Seinfeld fans played Peterman.
And was the Family Feud host
and
for a
Family
while.
Feud host, and was on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
So he was another recent one that comes to mind that was really fun too.
And he has a great voice.
He can say anything, and it sounds good.
Yeah. So the final question: your favorite way to have fun, just in general.
In general, well, now all of our kids are out of the house. It used to be always something to do with whatever the kids were doing that was the most fun. I think that right now my wife and I are just enjoying taking little trips. We ran down to Little Rock, Arkansas. We had never been there, and just the two of us went and did that. So these little weekend trips are fun. But on a daily basis, this sounds boring, but I get home, I take the two dogs out, and we take a nice long walk. And whether the weather's great or not, that's really like every day. I really look forward to just getting out there, taking a walk with the dogs, and having some fun that way.
That must be pretty relaxing. Great way to start the day.
It is, and the dogs, they don't pay attention to me, and so it works out just fine.
Works out great. Now we're done with the fun, Dowd. If you could give me, as my journey to be a great host or broadcaster, interviewer, whatnot, what advice would that be?
Well, I think you're already on the right track because you've obviously done some research. You know your topic. You know who you're talking to, and you make them feel very comfortable and relaxed, which is half the battle. And you're having a conversation. And I think also the other thing is, as an interviewer, it's really important to listen. It's so important to listen, and you're very good at that. And I think that sometimes people who get kind of caught up on their papers, like a paper in front of them, they don't listen. And they're so ready to ask the next question that they miss what was happening in that last answer. And so I think that as far as just the job of interviewing, listen well, research as best you can. And nowadays with the interwebs, it's really good to research is easier than it used to be.
Yeah.
I interviewed a couple of guys once who had made a movie, and the star of the movie was a woman whose name is escaping me, but she was a famous star of her era. And I said, "What did so-and-so think of this movie that you made?" "Oh, she died." Now, see, that's embarrassing for a host to say. What did she think of it? "Oh, she passed away." So, it's research, study it, know it, and then be conversational so you can really engage your guest. And I think you're doing all of that well. And then keep doing radio and do television, do whatever you can do, because broadcasting courses are great, and I'm so happy when my classes get filled or close to filled, but it's really doing it like you're doing it that makes the difference.
Awesome. My thanks to Joel Nichols. Do you have any plugs?
Well, you can always watch Kansas City Live at 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. You can watch the morning news at 6 to 7. They're on earlier, but my little bits are between 6 and 7. And then Nichols at Night on Saturday nights after Saturday Night Live. You can see that. All of those are good, fun things. And if you watch them and like them and go online and watch them, that's all good.
Awesome. And I cannot thank you enough for being here. Such a legend to be in the studio and talking to. And we will see you next week with more great shows here on the Midday Show with me, Brandon Parnes. Thanks a lot.